we can say some negative things that aren't true. For example, we can say there's no reason to believe that God is a duality, that God is more than one. And that's his second principle, where he says God is one. He's kind of arriving there as a logical conclusion, a rational progression from saying, well, we can't really describe God beyond encompassing the whole concept of God as one single thing that's unlike anything else. So we can accept it that God is a oneness.
Right. So here, when we go to anthropomorphism, he's not only saying that God has no body, but we need not to think about God as having a body. So that if it's not just reimagining the language of the Bible, and it's not just not worshiping idols, idol worship, it would be anthropomorphism, and it would be objectionable if you in your head, when you worship God, have a mental image of God is some physical being. So if you think of God as an old man with a beard in heaven, my mind would say you're worshiping an idol.
But given the way that the Torah is, structured, it's kind of hard to avoid that.
That's why he devoted an enormous amount of his writing to countering that position. Yes. That was his great fear. That was his great motivator. 25% more of the Guide to the Perplexed is how to understand the anthropomorphic metaphors of the Bible. Before he launches into philosophy, he just talks about how to use the language. And then he goes through term after term after term to rewrite them and to understand them in naturalistic ways.
Can you give an example of that?
Yeah, I can. So when it says in the Bible that God stands, the metaphor means that God is a stable presence. It's got nothing to do with him physically standing.
Okay. That's quite a job.
And he goes through one term after the next.
Wow.
Is it surprising that he didn't offer a different siddur for prayer, since the prayer book isn't necessarily something that couldn't be changed, but yet the prayers are also so anthropomorphic? Why didn't he have a project to kind of make a new siddur?
Well, actually, before I answer that question, right, is because this is why I want to be able to say we did the first 5 principles before I have to go, right, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right, where it says, Adon Olam v'chol notzar yoreh gedulato u'malchuto. That's his way of saying, right, that you can pray. You praise God. So he believes that one of the principles is you should pray to God. So, right, you should pray to God and not angels and not stars or not other beings. It's an interesting question. Why did he not trying to think if there was such a thing as a well, I do know this, that there were several synagogues in Cairo, right? There was an Ashkenazic synagogue, Babylonia, and then there was a Palestinian synagogue, and then there was the one that Maimonides davened in. So I don't know if he had his own prayer book, but he certainly had what he did and what would work to go and do that. So
Can I ask you another question about non-corporeality, but he doesn't have a body? He's not material. What would he have, if you think about ideals, like let's say Platonic ideals, the idea that God is an idea, is that going too far? You know, if an idea doesn't have substance, doesn't have a body, and ideas have power of sorts, but they are different. Is God more than idea? Would that be objectionable to him?
well, so, and with this, I'm going to conclude, is God exists. God is not an idea. God exists. We don't have the ability to describe it, right? But don't use anthropomorphisms. I have an idea that E equals MC squared. It's an idea. It's a theory. Is God equal to that theory? Is God like a theory? Is God like, you're already in trouble. You've now created a category and you're saying that God is in the category. God is the best of that category, or God is super in that category, but it's in the category. And therefore you've made an analogy that in some way you've linked it, and Maimonides would go berserk. God exists, period. Don't try to explain it. Or as Arnold said, you got to use negative language. Okay, for next week, your homework assignment is to sing Yigdal as many times as you can every night. And we're going to try to get through some more principles next week. Bring your questions, bring your fans, and see what we can do. This is very hard material, and you were great. So I think that Maimonides certainly, when we say that one of the purposes of this creed was to be able to teach some very important ideas, I think we could say that that was very successful. We certainly talked about a lot of very important and very complicated ideas. So thank you for being very brave and very courageous. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Refuah Shalema,
Thank you,
Rabbi.
Refuah Shlema.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rabbi.